storyteller, your characters have important things to say to each other, tantalizing information to reveal to your readers, and witty banter to...
Sure, but how do you show someone interrupting all that stuff?
Well, that's where M-dashes come in.
But what if they decide to leave their sentence unfinished? You know, they decide not to say what they were thinking and just...
leave it hanging? We'll cover trailing speech, too. Before you ask, yes, we'll talk about stuttering and stammering if certain people will let us get started.
So what's taking so long?
Hey, storyteller. As I was about to tell you before my evil twin hijacked our writer coaching session, today we're tackling all the things that can fragment our characters' sentences during conversations. These can give your dialogue flavor and make it sound more natural. In case you're new here, hi, I'm Bridget from B Squared Writer Coaching. I'm an author, editor, and your story coach, here to help you make your story powerful, polished, and publishable, so you can move readers and help them experience your character's journey with maximum emotional impact. Before we get started, I have a gift for you just for visiting my channel, the Ultimate Guide to Dialogue Punctuation. This PDF will show you how to punctuate, format, and structure dialogue, character thoughts, and all the conversation fragmenting things we'll talk about today in a few easy-to-follow pages with examples. You may want to go ahead and download it now and use it to follow along during our video, or you can wait until the end and grab it as a resource you can use afterward. Either way, just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/dialogue. That's the letter B, the number 2, writercoaching.com/dialogue. And be sure to stick around till the end of this video so you won't miss this week's Power Up, a super practical action step you can take right now in the story you're working on. In order to effectively convey those conversation fragmenting dialogue quirks, we will need to use several types of punctuation. The first set we'll talk about are 3 different types of dashes. The one we'll use most often is called an M dash. This is the long dash that you see in the middle of sentences or at the end for interruptions. Then we have what's called an N dash, which is a little shorter, and that one is used more to show ratios like 2-to-1 or other instances when we would use this punctuation mark in place of the words to or through. We won't really be dealing with that one today, but the last type of dash we'll look at is the hyphen. This is the typical tiny short dash that you'll see when we're joining words together or at the ends of sentences when hyphenation is turned on and a word runs over to the next line, or we use this to show stammering and stuttering. Each has a distinct purpose, and today we'll be focusing on the M dash and the hyphen, as well as another type of punctuation, which we would call ellipses or suspension points. These are the 3 dots. It looks like 3 periods that are spaced apart, and we can find this in the middle of sentences or at the ends of sentences. To start off, let's discuss when to use the M dash. The reason these are called M dashes and N dashes, by the way, just a little trivia for you, is that back in the days when we all used typewriters, the M dash was the same length as the letter M on a typewriter. And you may have guessed it, yes, an N dash was the length of the letter N on a typewriter. The first place we would want to use an M dash is to show interruptions in speech. Here's an example. Mom, I didn't break the... Don't lie, Sam. So after the word the, we have an M dash. Notice we don't have any spaces around the M dash. It runs right into the E in the word the, and we close it out with the closing quotation mark right next to the end of the M dash. We will also use this type of punctuation if a character interrupts his or her own sentence of dialogue by inserting extra or parenthetical information. For example, he was the best friend I ever had, the boy with the tattoo, before I met you. In this example, the boy with the tattoo is not necessary for the sentence to be understood or to convey the meaning in the sentence. We could just simply say, he was the best friend I ever had before I met you. But the character is stopping to more clearly identify the person he's talking about. The character has inserted the boy with the tattoo. You could put that in parentheses. That's why we call it parenthetical. It's extra, it's not necessary to the meaning, but it does convey some important information, or at least the character thinks it's important. So we place an M dash on each side of that parenthetical information, and again, no spaces around the M dash. If the speaker takes an action right in the middle of the sentence but doesn't stop speaking to do so, we use an em dash there as well, but this time on the outside of the quotation marks. Here's an example. So what do you think, he jabbed a finger at me, we should do about it? So the character is saying the full sentence all at once. So what do you think we should do about it? But while he's saying this, he's jabbing a finger at the point of view character. Notice how we place the em dash outside the quotation marks. So what do you think, close quotation mark, em dash, and then the word he, all running together with no spaces. The same happens at the end of the action. He jabbed a finger at me, and after me we have the em dash and then the opening quotation marks and the rest of the character's dialogue. You may be wondering though, how do we create an em dash? There are a few different ways on some computers, and depending on how your computer or your word processor, particularly Microsoft Word, may be set up, you can hit the hyphen key twice, and when you type the next letter, or in some cases you may have to hit the space bar, and it will automatically create an em dash. If you do have to hit the space bar, you'll need to press the delete key or backspace, because we, again, don't want spaces on the ends of our em dashes. But another way is to use a keyboard shortcut. For a Mac, that would be holding down the Shift and Option keys while pressing the hyphen. On a PC, you can hold down the Alt key and type in succession the numbers 0, 1, 5, 1 on the number keypad, not above the keys. It has to be the number keypad for this. Or you can press and hold down the Control key, the Alt key, and the minus sign on the number pad. This can't be the hyphen above the letters on your keyboard. If you do use the hyphen with Control Alt and the hyphen above the letters on the keyboard, you're going to change your cursor instead of creating an em dash. So then, how and when should we show stammering? And as I mentioned before, for this we use a hyphen. So no extra keyboard shortcuts for that one. You could just press the hyphen key. It makes it a lot easier. But how can we do this, and when should we do this? To show stammering or stuttering, what we do is we place a hyphen between 2 or 3 repeated initial letters of a word. So whatever letter starts the word, whether it's a consonant or a vowel, we can repeat it, either place that letter at the beginning of the word twice with hyphens between, or 3 times. I wouldn't suggest doing more than 3. 3 is enough to show the prolonged stammer, and more than that can just feel overdone to the reader and might even be a little annoying. Remember that old writing industry saying, RUE, resist the urge to explain. Trust your reader to get it. Here's an example. Celeste clutched her bag against her chest. Where are we going? And notice here, we didn't just use the initial letter. When we have a combination like the WH that makes a single sound, we use both of those and we repeat the WH instead of just W and then WH, because that would be where. But we want where instead. I hope the sound of that came through for you guys. And here's a pro tip for you. Don't overdo it. And not just with the number of times that we repeat the initial letters of the word, but also the number of times that we show the character stammering within a sentence or even within a paragraph. 1, 2, I wouldn't go over 3 in close proximity. Even if this character is shivering, in real life we might stammer more, but we really don't stammer every word in a sentence. That would get super annoying and just feel really jarring and choppy to the reader. When we do show stammering or stuttering, we should not use he stuttered or she stammered as a dialogue tag. That would be redundant. The punctuation alone shows the reader the stammering or stuttering is occurring. So again, resist the urge to explain. Here's an example so you can see how awkward that would be. Celeste clutched her bag against her chest. Where are we going? She stammered. It's just not necessary. And if you're wondering, by the way, what a dialogue tag is, you can check out this video on how to structure dialogue. It talks about dialogue tags and action beats and all those things. I'll link it here above and also in the description. So in which situations might we want to use stammering or stuttering with a hyphen? Well, of course, when a character is nervous or afraid, but also when that character is cold or shivering for some other reason. This would be what we would call stammering, but if a character has a speech impediment, we would call that stuttering, and we format that the same way. Are you finding this helpful so far? If so, fantastic. Consider hitting the like button so YouTube will show this video to more writers like you. I really appreciate it. So, what are ellipses and when and how do we use those? We want to use ellipses or suspension points, as they're also called, when we want to show a sentence that is left deliberately incomplete. In this case, the character chooses to not finish the sentence. Rather than being interrupted by someone else, this character makes the choice to leave that sentence incomplete or not finish the thought. This is also what we call trailing speech. Here's an example. I suppose I should, but... and then the character just trails off. This can happen when a character figures the rest doesn't need to be said. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, so I'm just going to not say the rest of it. Or the character decides at the last minute not to finish the thought. Maybe he or she was going to say something, but we don't show the thought in the middle of this, but he thinks or she thinks this might be hurtful to someone, so the character cuts him or herself off and doesn't finish it, or maybe thinks it would be to his or her own detriment to finish this thought. Whatever the case is, the character has made that choice. We can also use ellipses in the middle of a sentence if the character is pausing for a significant amount of time, a longer pause than a comma would create. And this can happen if the character is stopping to think about something, like I just did there, or pausing for emphasis. Here's an example from my own novel, Keeper of Shadows. Do you think he could be, dangerous? In this case, the character is sort of thinking through her words as she's speaking and trying to decide whether to say this or not. We can also use ellipses in the middle of sentences or even between a few short sentences if the speaker or the narrator, this is not in dialogue, is showing a little hesitation or pausing between elements in a series of events. Sometimes we use this to show an ongoing series of events, like quick actions that happen in succession, but we don't want to be as abrupt as ending each with a period. Here's an example. He cleared out the whole house, the bedrooms, the study, the family room, even my art studio. Notice how the speaker there is pausing between each. It sort of shows a lingering progression between the elements the character is listing here. The pauses also create a bit of emphasis on each one. So how do we create ellipses? Well, as with the em dash, sometimes if our computers are set up this way, we can type 3 periods in a row and the computer will automatically space them out more to create the ellipsis, but sometimes we might need to hit the space bar afterward and then backspace because we, again, don't want spaces on either side of the ellipses. But if our computers aren't set up that way, we can do this on a Mac by pressing and holding the Option key and pressing the semicolon. I know, weird, right? And on a PC, we can do this by holding the Alt key and typing 0133 on the number pad. And remember, do not place spaces around the ellipses either before or after them. And also don't place a period at the end of an ellipsis. That is sufficient punctuation to end your sentence. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to download your ultimate guide to dialogue punctuation. Remember, just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/dialogue. For this week's Power Up, examine a scene from your story for places where you could or maybe have used some of these conversation fragmenters like interruptions, trailing speech, stammering, or significant pauses within sentences. Use your ultimate guide to dialogue punctuation as a reference or your notes that you've maybe taken during watching this video to make sure you're using the punctuation in those instances correctly. If not, you can use this reference to make corrections and make those sections more effective and clearer for the reader. And remember, be strategic in when and where to use these breaks in conversation. Choose spots in which those fragmented conversations can add emphasis or create emotional tension or other types of tension in your story. Interruptions, stammering, and trailing speech are all fantastic ways to convey character emotion, but sometimes we need to show how characters feel without using spoken words. Check back for next week's writer coaching session when I will share a resource that can help you ramp up your character's emotions. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss it. And if you'd like to learn more about dialogue structure and punctuating and formatting, all the other pieces that go into dialogue, check out this video. And let's power up your storytelling.